Hi folks, Tac-Raze here. I've got a new knife to show you today. It's not this one. This is one I've had for a long time, but it's in this series. So this is the Tops Tac-Raze, which I've done a couple of videos on it before actually. Comes in a wee leather belt sheath which you can wear right way up or cross draw, whichever you prefer, scout draw, and it'll go on your belt either way around. It'll take a reasonably sized belt, so that's quite nice. It comes with that. Being a Tops product, it doesn't come with much else. It did come with a bottle of oil and a whistle, an emergency whistle, which I have somewhere. I don't know where I put it, but I've got it somewhere. Now this is a slightly unusual knife, and it's very much what we in the UK would call a Marmite knife. Now I don't know if Marmite's a worldwide thing, but it's one of those products that people either love or hate. It's a yeast-based vegetarian spread that you put on toast and butter, and if you like it, you'll love it. It's quite salty. It tastes sort of beefy, although there is no. It is vegetarian. There's no. Anyway, point about it is you either love it or you hate it. It's one of those products. My wife cannot stand the stuff. Just the smell of it turns her stomach. I absolutely love it, and this is one of those knives. Now, luckily, there are differences in this world. If we all liked the same things and we all bought the same things, life wouldn't be very interesting. But this is one which I love, and actually my wife, though we have different tastes in Marmite, this is her go-to knife. Whenever there's a parcel arrives from Amazon or whatever, she wants a knife to open it, this is the one that she goes for. Partly because it's one I keep in the kitchen, but more importantly, it's because it's a friction folder, which makes it very easy to open and very easy to close. Now, as I say, this knife is used a lot, so I just noticed it's pretty manky. But I've had this one, as I say, quite a long time, and it's just interesting. The reason I got it is because it was bought by Al at UK Legal Knives, and he reviewed it and actually thought he didn't like it at all. So it came in a little he sent it in a little pass round group, and it came to me, and I said, I love it. So he said, well, we'll keep it if you like it. And I said, well, thank you. Now I did balance the books a little bit later in that I had a Kaiser Pinch, which I absolutely loathed, and he loved it. So I said, well, you keep that one, and there we are. So that's where we are. But I like this. It's got a 1095 blade, so it's carbon steel, which would rust like hell, but it's got a nice coating to it. I have no idea what sort of coating that is, but it's a sort of grey colour. It's quite attractive. It's very easy to sharpen this. Almost impossible to keep a sharp point on the I hate to use this term, but tanto here. It's become quite curved, but this does mean that you've got a number of different ways you can use this knife. You've got it. You can use it, on the recurve part along the length of it here, to cut string, to cut through cardboard. It tends to stay in the cut, which is quite good. You've got this corner here, which is good for slitting open parcels and things like that. You've got a point here if you want to bring a point into play. You've got this part here that you can use as a sort of scraper. So it's very versatile in that respect, and as I say, it's easy to open and close. Now I dare say if one were just marginally more dexterous, opening and closing it with one hand would be easy enough. Now, as I say, it's a friction folder, which makes people always worry that they're going to close on their fingers. Well, if you don't know how to use a knife, yeah, it will close on your fingers. But this one is ultra secure. As with most friction folders, you have the extension to the back of the blade, which, if held in your hand, will stop it from stop it from closing rather. And if you put your finger in the finger trial here and your thumb on the back there, it literally can't fold. In a way, I mean, it's supposed to look like a razor, and in a way it uses a similar principle to a razor, because with an open razor, now you actually would, this is a stop pin so you can't do it, but you would open the handle so it pointed out that way rather than down this way, but then you would hold the blade of the razor to shave with, and not, I mean, in effect it would be the other way around, wouldn't it? Because you put the handle up and you would hold the razor by the blade, and the handle is really just a cover to keep the blade clean, so to keep the blade from cutting you rather. So that's the thing. Anyway, now I like this knife, and I made a video about it and I was very positive about it, and one of the people that was watching, this is a while, we're going back a while, didn't like it either. They had one and they sent it to me. I can't remember if I gave anything in return for it or not. Usually try to, but this one here it's also the Tac-Raze. It's also by Tops. It's also made in the US of A, which obviously probably matters more to those of you who are also made in the USA yourselves. But this one, the only real difference is it's got a micarta handle rather than the G10, and because of that I like this one a bit more. The problem with the G10, and it's not a huge problem, but it just collects rubbish because it's got these lines cut into it, and every time you put it in or out of anything, including the sheath, it tends to accumulate little bits of rubbish into those things that always just looks a wee bit grubby. The micarta, on the other hand, is, you've got the texture of the micarta, which is one of those finishes that, you know, wears in rather than wears out. As I generally want to say. So it's a good, you know, it's got a good grip on it. You've got that same blade. One thing that is interesting is that because I've got the two of them, you can compare the amount of wear on the blade from a 1095 blade. This is noticeably shorter than this. The distance between the flat here and the point of the knife is definitely shorter, and I think it's also slightly narrower, and that's just down to the fact that this one's been sharpened many times to keep it going over the years that I've had it. Incidentally, one of the things that often puts people off with these knives is the recurve and sharpening. I've never sharpened this one, it's in its original state, but this one I sharpened using I've originally sharpened it using the Lansky fixed angle system. I've used the Lansky turnbox system, but more recently I used the Worksharp precision adjust, and it is quite capable of producing a genuinely mirror finish. That's taking it up to the ceramic and then a leather strop. Don't think I used the strop off the Worksharp. only because it'd be quite difficult to get it into that recurve, and it's easier to use effectively the edge of a conventional strop. Anyway, so why are we going over this today? Just money for old rope? Well, not really. In one of the videos I did on this one, I said that there was another version of this, and if I ever see it, I'll get one. But it's been very difficult to get a hold of one. But about a week or two ago, sorry, I am a bit late on this, one of my subs, a guy called Rhys Pritchard, contacted me and said, I've got one of the other ones. If you'd like it, I'd be very happy to send it to you. So I said, that's fantastic. What can I give you in return? And he said, nothing. And I kind of pushed it a little bit, because I like to try and pay my way, as it were, in this world. But he said, no, nothing. And it arrived in the post with no return address, so I can't even send him something against his will. Anyway, what's the different about this one? We've got the old a sheath again. It's the dark sheath, like the one I have with the my Carter one, which is quite nice. It's quite stiff in its sheath. I suspect that's because it's not had a lot of use. It's the G10 version, so it's very, very like this one. In fact, they've been cut out in exactly the same pattern. The only difference is this is a used one that's all grubby, and this is a clean one. But the difference, and the reason that Rhys sent it to me, and the reason that I was after it, is because this one has a different blade shape. This one has a straight razor style blade. Put that out of the way. So it's just this edge here which is sharp. This end is completely blunt. So there's no point. This is a pointless knife. But no, there's no stabbing point to it. It's purely, you do have a point here that you can use for cutting, and you've got a perfectly straight edge here. So you could think of this as like a sheep's foot blade, but with a really radical, because in fact this is actually, it's not just is it not sloping in the conventional sheep's foot way, it actually slopes the other way, like that, just. Again, it's 1095 steel, again it's coated, again it's the G10, and effectively from that blade line there, I don't know what you call it. You'd call it a shinoki if it was Japanese, but this blade line here with the transition between the bevel, the primary bevel, and the flats. If you go above that line and to about here, the knife is absolutely identical to this one, but it doesn't have the recurve, and it doesn't have the curve at the end, and so it's used different. Instantly, when I made videos of these before, I put these down as being model numbers, but they're actually serial numbers. These numbers are serialized, I believe. So those are not model numbers, but actually the serial number. So the number on this, despite it being the newest of them all, is the lowest of them all, although this is a Z and that's an X. So you can read into that what you want. I don't know if they started at A and got to Z, or whether they started at X and got to Z, or started at Z and started going backwards. I don't know. But anyway, this is a really nice knife, and Rhys, I am incredibly grateful that you donated it. It really does help with making up this sort of set, as it were. As I say, this one is an absolute user. These two, I suspect, are more likely to be collection knives and just to look after them. Partly because although this one, kind of appears to have a sort of simple, straightforward, traditional sheep's foot, in effect, style, utility anyway, I actually find these different curves very, very useful. Plus, of course, this one, because it's been around a while, is very much lighter in the action, which makes it easier to open and shut, which, as I say, my wife always appreciates, whereas the newer ones are really quite stiff. And something I know about, but I've not experimented with these, but as anybody who watches UK Legal Knives, and I recommend that you do, the one thing that Al does that I just don't do is he takes every knife to bits when he gets it. So when he first got this one, he took it to bits and immediately discovered that there is very strong Loctite on that screw. This one was very, very stiff. So he went to take it to pieces, and this he found was really heavily Loctited, and that made it difficult to get apart. But once you got it apart, you could put it back together, set the blade a little bit more attractively, and then you're home and dry. Now, the other thing I remember him saying is that this has washers in it, but I think they might be steel as opposed to a brass or bronze, which is odd and unusual. Seems to work, doesn't seem to cause it any problems, but it's an interesting departure. Now, as I say, I'm a big fan of these knives. I think they're great. They are technically UK legal to carry, but I think I would be reluctant to carry them, and let me sort of explain that a little, because there will be plenty of people out there who'll say, oh, the blade length is less than 3 inches, there is no problem. Well, right, let's have a look. Now, let's move these up a little. In fact, I'm going to turn them around because it's easier to measure them this way. Now, cutting edge on this blade is uncontroversially well under 3 inches. However, the blade, if you come to the nearest point of the tang, is about 3¼ inches. And if you were to go all the way to the back there, you'd be at 4½ inches. Now, that in itself, according to the legislation, is perfectly legal, no problem, and you can go out there and carry this in your pocket without a good reason every day of the week. As regards I'll go with this one because my other one's got a bit shorter, so we'll do some measuring with that one in a second. But in terms of this one, when it's new, is even more complicated, because if you measure the cutting edge in a straight line there, it's again uncontroversially less than 3 inches. However, if you measure all the way along here, you get 2¼ inches. Plus, you got this bit here, which is just over an inch. I'll do it up here a bit. Just over an inch. So you're over the 3 inches of cutting length if you measure along the length of the edge. And just like with the straight blade, if you measure it from the furthest point the handle gets to, you're just over the 3 inch mark, about 3 1/8. If you measured it from here, the furthest you could measure the blade, it's 3½ So it's, according to the legislation, absolutely fine. if you listen to the Black Belt Barrister, he will tell you that it's the entire blade length that matters, and that's been tested in court. And if you want to argue about it, that's fine, but feel free to prepare to be convicted. So he says, anyway. Now, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. He is a lawyer. Maybe you should give more credence to what he says than to what anything that anybody on the internet says. I can't say. But I would be just a little cautious about carrying one of these, apart from anything else, because they just look a bit tactical. Being called the Tac-Raze. I think actually, I always think that knives make very poor weapons of self-defense. But these wouldn't even make great weapons of attack. They don't really have very good sort of stabbing points, and they're not wouldn't actually be that good at slashing. This one perhaps a little bit better, in that it's modelled on a razor, and razors were used as weapons back in the 50s and 60s. Though incidentally, they were mainly used because we still had hanging at that time, and so even gangsters didn't really want to kill people if they could avoid it, and they preferred a weapon that would slash rather than kill. That was their raison d'etre. Killing people was, as they said then, a mug's game, because you'd only end up spending the rest of your life, your very short life, in prison before they lengthened your neck for you. So I don't think they make very good weapons anyway, but these make particularly poor weapons. So it's a little bit odd to find them called Tac-Raze. But nonetheless, they would be legal to carry, but I just wouldn't. Anyway, I've gone on too long. If you like this stuff, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my stuff, and I'm just about to shoot another video just as I'm doing this one, which will probably go out first, about Stockman. And then subscribe and remember to ring the bell. And once again, before I go, thank you very much to Rhys Pritchard for sending me this knife along. I am eternally grateful, and I'd still be happy to offer you something, a knife that's more suitable to you, something you might carry in return. Just get in touch. You know how to find me. Bye.